Thinking Liberty, Episode 7.
Welcome to Thinking Liberty, the podcast that explores lifestyles of freedom-minded individuals. Join us as we discuss work, hobbies, health, learning, and more while living a travel-orientated lifestyle. Be curious, be open, be inspired, be free. And now, here are your hosts, Zach and Sarah Varnell.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Thinking Liberty. We're coming to you now on this intro from Las Vegas, Nevada, but the interview you're about to hear was in our studio, with our guest in an Airbnb in Atlanta. So I'm Zach.
And I'm Sarah. And as we are continuing from last week, we're still on our mini break from the RV. We're, like Zach said, we're staying in a couple of Airbnbs and traveling around a little bit to see family and friends. We were in Atlanta last week. We went to a friend's wedding over the weekend, and I think we mentioned that, but it really brought up one of the unique challenges for us of living in an RV, and that's that, you're living in a 36-foot-long space, and you really don't have much closet space, and you really don't have a whole lot of room in that closet space for your clothes. So we don't tend to travel with much in the way of fancy dress items. It just takes up too much precious space. And so I have been known in the past to go out and buy specific items for specific events, only for those items to later either be immediately donated because I don't need them anymore, or I end up putting them with some of our other items in storage because I just loved them too much to part with them. So I saw recently that a friend of mine tried Rent the Runway and she loved it. So I decided that I would try it out too. It was really easy to go in, put in my size, put in categories of what I'm looking for clothing-wise. They have, dresses, tops, skirts, shoes, purses, jewelry, pretty much everything. But I just selected 2 dresses that I could try out and see if one of them would be good for the wedding. And one of them ended up being perfect, so I wore that and then was able to just put it back in the mail, or rather had Zach take it to the postal service for me.
I walked nearly a mile to the UPS store in Las Vegas in the middle of the day. That was probably not... Well, it was a mile there and a mile back. I regretted that, not taking an Uber at the end.
Yeah, thankfully I got pulled into a meeting, so I was not able to attend that one journey with him. So it was really easy. You have a couple of options for how long you want to keep the clothing. I was able to select when I absolutely had to have it delivered to me by. So it really turned out great. I had a pretty dress to wear to the wedding, but it won't end up taking closet space or being immediately donated. So if you want to try it, go to thinkingliberty.com/runway, and if you sign up with the link there, you'll get a coupon code for $30 off your first order, and then I will also get a discount on my next purchase too. So really, it's a win-win if you think about it. But anyway, we flew out to Vegas after that. And we've been able to check out a couple of magic shows, and that's been really fun. Played a few slots, didn't win anything. And then, so tomorrow for us, but I never really know how to talk about time when it comes to this. So tomorrow for us, but by the time you're listening, this will already be over. We're going to meet up with a few friends to hang out and catch up, and we're going to a music festival over the weekend. So it should really be a good experience and some good bonding time, but also get to hear some really good music and just experience a little bit more of the nightlife of Vegas. I will say that traveling like this really makes me appreciate how homey the RV is. We've been in 2 different Airbnbs, and then we're also going to be spending a couple of nights in a hotel. So I don't know about you, Zach, but I'm kind of feeling a little bit like I want my bed, I want my pillows.
Yeah, we'll have to do an entire episode sometime on, living in Airbnbs, because we've stayed for about a month and a half was our longest stay in an Airbnb. But we've done a lot of shorter trips, and some of them can be pretty nice, but it's never quite your house. Like you said, we miss all the comforts of our home on wheels, but it was kind of weird when we were in Argentina. We actually kind of started viewing that one as our home and missed it a little bit when we left. But it still had its drawbacks of, certain things not being as nice as it would have been at home, or not being fully stocked like we would have liked it to have been. So we'll have to do an episode sometime on all that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not above buying a couple of things to make places nicer, but that's only for extended stays, like that month and a half. I think we did end up giving in and buying a couple of pillows and things like that to make it more comfortable. But when you're only somewhere for 2 or 3 days, it's really like you just kind of have to suffer through any negatives. But I think for the most part, we've had pretty good luck with it. But anyway, so our interview today, I think it's a really good one, so we want to go ahead and move on into it. We're interviewing Josh Scarberry. He currently lives in Atlanta, Georgia, with his little cute fox puppy.
Yeah, which we got to take care of when he was on this big trip we're about to talk about. So.
Yeah, and he's not really a fox puppy. He's a Shiba Inu, but
really
he looks like a fox, and he kind of acts like a cat, which I would think is fox-like, but I don't really know how foxes behave. And
whenever I've been over to Josh's house before, sometimes I would just take Kiyoshi out, if he needed to go outside, and people really do just look at him and go, "Is that a fox?" Like, no, but kind of.
But yeah, so a couple of things that we'll touch on in the interview is about, being in the moment and just looking for opportunities and taking them when you can and following them wherever they go. Sometimes things are not going to happen to you in the right order or at the right time, or they're not going to happen exactly how you would want them to, but you really have to just, seize the moment and explore any opportunity that happens. Sometimes you really plan out your travel, you take time off of work, or you save money so that you can quit and focus on travel, or you might even negotiate with your boss to work remotely and then travel that way, or some people will take an extended leave or some type of sabbatical experience and travel
maybe you're
around.
an entrepreneur and you can work on the road. But.
Exactly, yeah, you create your own business. And if you do it that way, it's easy to imagine that everything about it, the trip, the planning, the dreaming, the destinations, experiences, that it's all going to be super positive and super perfect and Instagram worthy. But it's not always that way, but that's kind of how it feels, because you know exactly what you're doing and where you're going and why you're doing it. But then other times, travel just kind of pops up as a solution. You might be feeling frustrated in where you are in your life right now, or you have some negative experiences happen to you that kind of push you in the direction of escaping and getting away for a little bit. And Josh kind of falls more on this end. His life wasn't terrible, but he had a couple things happen to him. He was struggling to figure out what he wanted, where he was going, what his goals were. He lost his job suddenly, and really wasn't happy with where his career was headed anyway in that particular field and technology that he was in. His lease was coming to a close. One of his current roommates wasn't planning to renew, so he was left with trying to find new roommates and a new place to live with no job. So it was just a really kind of scary, frustrating time at that point. So before I tell any more of that, we'll just go ahead and let Josh take us through his story.
Hey Josh, welcome to Thinking Liberty. So let's just start out. Tell us a little bit about yourself. We've already introduced you to the audience, but just let us know a little bit about yourself, your hobbies or anything like that.
Yeah, so I'm basically just kind of the geeky, nerdy type. So, I work in the tech industry, and all my kind of hobbies relate to, board games, geekdom, enjoy cons and those kind of things. And then on the other side of the spectrum, music's my passion. So, I follow it and I see it, listen to it. Basically anything that involves music, I want to be a part of it.
Play it.
Yep, play some of it. Maybe that'll kick off, but we'll see.
So we've actually been for several years. So it's kind of cool to have you on today.
More than several, I think, at this point.
Maybe we're hitting a decade.
Yeah, a decade now. Yeah, 10 years. Wow. So we wanted to bring you on and interview you today because we think that you have a really interesting perspective about travel. And it was a really cool story about, why you kind of jumped into it and I'm sure many listeners can relate to the same situation and the same circumstances. So a couple of years ago, you took an unexpected trip to Europe and you just picked up and went. So we want to learn a little bit more about that. So could you tell us a little bit about the circumstances that led to your trip?
Yeah, so my trip was completely unplanned. I never thought I would do such a thing. I never even really considered it before. I've heard of people, traveling, backpacking, but it all kind of seemed like a distant wish. Like, how would that happen to me? But I guess what had to happen is one day I came into my job at the time, and I got a notification that I was getting laid off, and that would be my last day. So once that happened, I immediately, most people kind of say to themselves, like, you gotta find a new job, you just lost mine, gotta get back into it as fast as possible. And then the more I kind of looked into possible jobs, the more I was kind of like, this isn't really what I want to do. A lot of it's like kind of corporate office jobs, you come in, do your thing, and then you go. And that wasn't really what I wanted to jump into right away. And, with everything going on, it really kind of got me thinking, and I didn't like where I was living, just in general, I just didn't really like where I was. So I kind of thought about it, and I just thought, why don't I just pack up my bags and leave? So that's kind of what I did. I thought that the next day I looked online, I booked a one-way ticket to Ireland, and I just kind of went a week later. It was kind of really impromptu because I knew I'm very much a person that likes to plan things. Things have to be right. I know what I'm doing, but I just decided to kind of drop all that, really get out of my comfort zone. The idea of it was really frightening to me, but because it was like, all right, I got to do this. I can't call myself on this or back off. Like, I just have to like jump into the water,
Yeah, I think that's the really cool part too. It's that, most people take yearly trips somewhere, whether it's to a state that they've always wanted to visit or to another country, or they take a cruise, but it's always planned. It's always, they have something to come back to. They know what they're coming back to. But you were just like, well, here I am with no job, and you didn't know really how long you'd be gone or when you'd come back or what you would be doing when you came back. Like your lease was ending too, so you didn't have a place to stay either. So it's just kind of this whole unknown, and you just jumped right in. What was it like telling your friends and family?
It's kind of funny because it was almost a shock. When I told my roommates at the time, I was like, hey, I know my lease is in a few months. Is it okay if I pay my rent, but I actually won't be here? And they're like, well, where are you going? It's like, well, I bought a one-way ticket to Europe. And they're like, wait, you're just going to leave? I'm like, yep, I'm just going to leave. And so, most of my friends were kind of like in that disbelief, kind of like, you're just kind of going to go, and yeah, that's really what's going to happen. And, I like to say I got support from my parents, but, they were also shocked and, kind of saying, you need to get back in line and go that route, just gain a job again. But, it's not really, again, it's not what I wanted to do. So the biggest reaction was just kind of disbelief because, yeah, I think most people are really hesitant to do that, especially just kind of going into an unknown. Because, when I went, I only had 2 days booked at a hostel. And after that, it was just kind of a big open window. I didn't know how long I was going to go. I had a certain amount of money. I said, once I'm mostly broke, I'll go back home. We got to save a little bit to get back and survive.
That return flight.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I just need to get back home on a return flight. And I don't know, maybe I can hitchhike my way back home if I had to. If I get on the road.
So I remember you telling me once that you did this because it was one of the things that scared you most and you wanted to push yourself and do something that really frightened you. Was it just the whole unplanned nature of it all that scared you, or just the idea of solo travel in general, or both?
I think for me, the biggest thing is just being completely on my own because, even when you're back home and you do a trip, even across a couple states or something, like there's always a safety net. There's always a way, you could get back home. There's always, if something really bad happened, a friend would come out and save you or something. But, going out on your own halfway across the world with no one to be your safety net, it's a really, I guess, like a big thing you kind of have to overcome. And for me, that was it because, being completely on my own, not knowing anyone, at the time, I was kind of pretty socially awkward, just like strangers. I didn't really know how to talk to these people. Language barriers. Like, how is this going to work? Am I just going to be out by myself the entire time? It's kind of like all these anxieties that kind of came up. And, on the airplane to Ireland, I've never been more scared in my life before. It's a lot of like, oh my God, what am I doing? Am I on this plane going this way? I don't even know where I'm going. Like, because, a lot of people, when they do trips, they'll do at least like some sort of research. I didn't do any research. I didn't even know what was in Ireland. I didn't even know 1 or 2 locations in Dublin. I just had the name of the hostel, or I didn't even know how to get to it. It's kind of like all these things. So, that frightened me a lot, but that was also kind of a big kind of like goal. It's like,
you feel like you kind of just jumped right into it because you were afraid that if you didn't just jump, you wouldn't do it?
Yeah, I'm kind of a person that will talk myself out of a lot of things. And, I've talked myself out of plenty of things that I wish I did, but didn't because, just of that self-dialogue. So I was like, just got to do it, just got to jump it. There's no other way that I'll do it. It's kind of like a skydiving or something, you just got to jump out of the airplane.
Well, I would probably never jump out of an airplane, but I think we're definitely trying to live a little bit like that.
Well, apparently when you get up there, they just push you out.
I know they will.
They have to. They will, yeah.
And then they tell you things like, don't put your head back or you'll possibly die. I'm like, yeah, I'm not getting up.
Or a good one is we'll count to 3 and then we'll jump and then they'll say 2 and then jump.
Yeah. But you're speaking from experience too.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you said you decided this and then your flight left a week later. So you really only had a week to figure out, where you wanted to go, what you wanted to see. And you said you didn't know when you were coming back. So you didn't really have a set route or set amount of time in mind?
No, I mean, in general, because I didn't really have too much interest in Europe. At first I was thinking, maybe Korea, Japan, but I really thought about it. In Europe, it's just really easy to travel around. Mm-hmm. So, even just impromptly, they have buses, trains, cars, like, basically every mode of transportation is available to you. So, I went to the side of Europe, but I've always been like a huge World War II history buff, and that was kind of like what drove me to different places. So I knew I wanted to go to London, to go to the World War II museums there, Berlin, because all the things that happened. I knew I wanted to go to Poland for Auschwitz, and so that was kind of like initially the most adventurous part for me. I was like, oh my God, Poland, that's like Eastern Europe. Oh my, what is that even going to be like? And kind of like other things. If I didn't know where to go at a certain point, I'd just be like, all right, what was something historical in World War II? Let's go there. A good example was, I was going to France, but I didn't want to just stay in Paris. I wanted to kind of get in, get out of there. But I was like, well, Normandy is not too far from there. So that kind of got me there. And it's kind of like one thing led to another because I didn't have any of it planned of where to go or what to do.
Do you have any sort of Euro pass or anything like that bought ahead of time, or did you just kind of book all transportation once you got there?
So I did buy Eurail right before I kind of left. That was like one of my preparation things. But when I got there, I actually learned that I regretted doing it because it expires after a certain amount of time and it kind of restricts where you can go.
Okay.
So it actually kind of like hindered me and kind of took away, complete freedom because
probably some of the spontaneity too.
Yeah, exactly. Because, if you have to use it during these time periods and one of these places, it kind of like keeps you there during that time. Mm-hmm. I actually had to change my plans just so I could use my Eurail to the fullest and not waste my money. But, when I came to find out, especially if you're moving around a lot, like things like, if time's on your side at least, buses are cheap and get you everywhere. And there's even like ride sharing, I was able to get through a lot of places just kind of like, on the internet, someone saying we're going here to here. You want to join and pay me some gas? Sure.
So how long total did you end up staying?
So I was there for right under 5 months, around 4.5 months or so. It's kind of just because I didn't have like a set time or anything, but the reason I kind of made it at that mark was I just kind of felt ready to come home. I kind of like accomplished my mission. Saw what I saw, wanted to do what I did, and a weird sense of homesick was actually kind of coming over me. I was missing my dog, which thank you for looking after.
Yeah, we were sad to give him back.
Yeah. When he saw me, probably thought I was died and he would never come back home. So it was very.
Yeah, he was definitely pretty sad for the first few weeks, but
He just stared at the door
Yeah.
for a while.
but we definitely had fun with him.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned a couple things that were pretty hard. What would you say was the easiest part of traveling around through Europe?
The easiest part was that was something I thought would be like the hardest, just getting around. Because if you're going to like a new country where you don't know the language, you don't know where you're going, all you have is a name of something. It's like, well, how do I do this? But 90% of the time, it was actually pretty easy. Especially with like smartphones, we can download like maps offline, get some instructions earlier. Because when I got there, I was thinking like, geez, how did people do this like 20 years ago? It's a completely different story. Even just like booking a hostel, like how do you even know what to find it? And the way they did it back then was like way different. They would have people at like bus stations with like signs and flyers telling you to go to a certain hostel because they wanted your business. But now it's it's none of that. You just look online and go somewhere.
Anymore, so no one does it anymore.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of places, they just have like signs, and you might not know the language, but this weird looking word means that's where you want to go. Just kind of find that.
Yeah, that's what we were most afraid of too when we went to Chile, because I'm a huge planner too when it comes to these things. So I was trying to plan out like every detail of at least where we would sleep and how we would get to the next destination. But looking online, there was no way to book buses or anything like that in Chile. But once we got there, it was super easy. Like the hostel that we stayed at was like, oh, you need bus pass? Let me sell that to you right here. Let me have them pick you up at the door. And then, when they messed up and didn't pick us up at the door, they called a cab and had the cab speed to the bus station so that we got on it. So yeah, we were surprised about how easy that was there. It just seems like any place that tourists like to go to, they're going to make it easy for you.
Yeah, they want to accommodate you and not get lost and hate the country you're in.
Yeah.
Make sure you have a good experience.
Yeah, for sure.
So what would you say was the absolute hardest part?
The only hard part that really sticks out is my first day there. So, and then the rest of it kind of came naturally because you just kind of go with it, and at that point you just kind of let things happen and stop trying to be in control all the time. Yeah. But that first day was especially hard because I was having that anxiety attack on the airplane for like 12 hours plus, so that was a lot of fun. But once you get off that, I kind of realized, well, here I am, which is a step above that. And for the first 2 days, I barely think I said a single word. Even when I got to the hostel, I just kind of said checking in. But after that, I couldn't talk to anyone. I couldn't say anything because I was just like so nervous, so anxious. Still no idea what I'm doing. It's like, okay, I arrived. Now what? I didn't think that far ahead. Do I see stuff? Do I eat somewhere? Oh, I'm gonna, be by myself for food. Well, is that kind of weird? Do I, kind of like all these things, trying to figure out, how am I even gonna do this thing? And that was a very organic process, but it's kind of like step by step.
So even with all that anxiety in the beginning, would you say the total time there ended up being positive for you and that you enjoyed it and look back fondly?
Yeah, I mean, all of it was positive. Even that first day is kind of positive, at least looking back on it, because, I had like a starting point. And, the only other negative nights, kind of same thing, I would only call them negative, is when I would drink an alcohol I've never heard of, and it's like, oh, this is our national alcohol, you should try it. Oh, well, I mean, some cultural exchange. And then I'd find myself puking until the next day.
Oh,
and,
goodness.
I tell myself never again, but it was kind of like a new category. Here you say, oh, I'll never drink again. But there's like, no, really, I won't drink that again.
Yeah, not until the next new thing.
Oh, yeah. If someone offered me some of those drinks I drank over there, I'd politely say, no, thank you. I've had it before.
So do you think that this experience changed you?
Yeah, definitely. Because, when I went out there, I was kind of at a point where I was just kind of lost myself. So, this is almost kind of one of those typical stories of soul seeking and just kind of like finding out about yourself. But at first, I didn't really think it'd really turn out that way, but it definitely did. I'd say the biggest thing I got from it is just being more comfortable as who I am and being okay with that, the good with the bad. I think that, when you have that much time alone and you're on trains for several hours and buses and everything else, and it's just you and, time to think, you really start to like analyze yourself and kind of, question things. And that's really what changed me the most because, once I got back home, there's like kind of like my motto to myself, which is, seize the day, just kind of go for it. It's like the open door philosophy, just say yes to stuff. And that's really what I got from it. Or before I'd be a little bit timid, I'd be like, oh, I want to do this, but I don't know if I should or, if I can. But once I got back home, it's just like, no, let's do it, whatever it is.
Do you think you still plan less, or do you dive into it more, or do you still go back to your...
It definitely taught me how to plan for trips because, I think before I might have been kind of one of those like standard tourists, like, oh, I'm going to go in the city and see these spots that everyone else sees, the postcard tourist, And for me, it really got me to focus on, I learned the things I like to do, like I mentioned before, music. So when I go into a new city, I would look on the internet and see what concerts are coming up or what, music festivals or just, outside events. And because of that, I ended up going to lots of things I would never even dreamed. I saw like an American like EDM duo over there in like a small bar in Germany, and there was only, maybe 50 people, and like 40 of them were Americans. So it was kind of a funny thing, just being there and being kind of nervous, like, oh man, I'm stuck around a bunch of like German, kind of anxious, and I just hear Americans talking to each other. Yeah, so for me now when I travel, I have something in mind, almost like event based. Like if I'm going to go somewhere like Colorado, it's because there's some sort of event going, and that's like my focus. And kind of let everything else kind of pan out naturally. I think too. It's just how to be spontaneous, and even if you have some days you don't know what you're doing, just be open to the idea of, I don't know, just figuring out something. If you know what you like.
Yeah, I feel like that's one lesson we learned from our last guest on the previous episode is she said that when she goes places, she just likes to do what she would probably like to do if she was at home even. Like go out, for her it was jewelry hunting. And for other people it could be music like that. And, you're not going to go wrong, and, you're in a different place, so it could be a different experience too. So it seemed like just from private conversations with you, you met a lot of people on this trip too. You met a lot of other tourists, and you met our, interviewee from episode 2, Beth. So how did you go about making friends on this trip, or did it just kind of arise naturally?
Very clunky process. My first friends I met was actually in Scotland because I didn't make any friends in Ireland. Kind of my fault, but it's kind of the process. But I went to Scotland, and I knew my new goal was to be like kind of like my first day at school. Like I'm gonna make my first friend. It's gonna be my goal. I'm gonna talk to someone, and just talk to myself like that. It's like, oh God, I'm nervous and anxious again. Yeah, that happens a lot. But they had a bar at the hostel, so I just decided to go there. I saw various people at tables. And I don't know, it's kind of like this weird thing where I kind of scanned the room and I kind of looked for maybe some people to be welcoming. And I saw these 2 guys at a table just talking to each other, but they weren't really like talking heavily. It was kind of like light, and it was kind of like quiet moments. I was like, I bet I could squeeze my way through that. So, I kind of just like said, hi, I'm Josh from America, can I hang out with you guys? And they were enthusiastic, and they're like, yeah, please join us. And it ended up being these 2 guys from Switzerland. And this moment's really big for me, too, because later on my trip, Christmas was coming. And that was another point of anxiousness. It's like, oh, my gosh, am I going to spend Christmas alone? No friends, no family? What am I going to do? And I just messaged those two guys from Switzerland I met in Scotland, our first day there, like, hey, I don't know if you guys are doing anything for Christmas, but I'm kind of looking for somewhere to go. And they're like, come join us. So,
You went to Switzerland?
yeah, I went to Switzerland and I stayed with both their families. One was in Zurich, so, I got to stay at the capital with his family. And the next day, I went to the other guy and their family stayed in a Grindelwald, which is, a beautiful place. It's like mountains, ski resorts, like basically when you think of Switzerland, it was that kind of town. And, that wouldn't have happened if I didn't say hi to those two guys at that table just hanging out. And the craziest thing is that's just like one story. There's half my trip, I'd say, was meeting new people. Because after that first day, I became more comfortable with it, next time wasn't.
Well, that wasn't so bad. Let's do more of that.
Yeah, what's the worst that can happen? They say no. Well, maybe I can say hi to someone else then. And yeah, the first half of my trip was that, and then the second half was meeting up with the people I met for my first half. Because I found that a lot of the travelers were like Europeans or lived in like England. For us, maybe we'll go to Tennessee, to Nashville for a weekend. To them, it's like maybe we'll just go to France for a weekend. It's it's kind of along the same lines. And so I got invited to people's homes. Bed to sleep on a lot of times, which is a godsend when you're sleeping on pretty much just bars and coils sticking in your back and side. So anytime there's a bed, kind of relished in that.
You feel like the hostels, for the most part, kind of encourage that community and meeting people and talking to people, or were some better than others at that?
All of them kind of mixed. There's definitely ones that like specialize in that. And for a lot of it, that's actually the ones I kind of like focused and wanted to go to because, I'm a single traveler, I don't know anyone. I want to go somewhere that has like-minded people. So there's a lot of hostels that are focusing on like the social aspect of it, and, a lot of solo travelers are there because I'd say probably about half or more are actually people traveling by themselves. And, when you come in together and you're on kind of like the same page, you start to want to talk about that. Sometimes the conversations were the same, how long you been here, where you been, where you going. But, once you get past that, you really get to kind of know different people. And then there was times I just didn't want to talk to people, just kind of tired, and you just want to have you time. And then, there's hostels that are more about just like quiet time, privacy, kind of do your own thing, not focused on the social aspect.
Was it easy to find out which type of hostel it is so that you can kind of pick and choose? Was it kind of a guessing game?
Thankfully, because of the internet, there's like hostelworld.com, and that was kind of like my main guide. Read reviews. People would say what this place is like meant for. Some would be like, this is a party hostel. If you're not here to party, you're gonna have a bad time. If you are here to party, you'll like it. But
Zach would be like, no thanks.
There's things you have to sacrifice, like cleanliness. The floors are gonna feel like sticky beer, but it's kind of what you do there.
Yeah, I'd have to work my way up to that.
Yeah, slowly.
Yeah, is this a half party hostel?
Can I just have like a get-together hostel?
Yeah.
Does everything shut down at midnight?
Yeah, what's curfew, noise complaints? Yeah, what do we have here?
So you mentioned Germany, Switzerland, France, Poland. What were some of the other countries you went to, and what was your favorite destination that you?
And what are your numbers? Like, how many countries and things like that?
So I went to 21 countries over a span of time. So I definitely got some footage in, but yeah, I kind of went. I started in Ireland, Scotland, and I went kind of through mainland Europe. And, my first destination was kind of Poland, so as far east as I could. And, I kind of went from there. Certain things happened that kind of directed me towards certain, directions. Like maybe I was in, good examples, I was in Budapest, and, I was thinking about kind of going a different direction, but I met some people there, and they're like, well, we're going to Slovakia. I was like, well, I wasn't really thinking about that, but that seems like a good option.
Why not?
Yeah, why not? I have, no plans. Have no job.
And you also turned down some proposals like that too, didn't you? I remember you telling me that somebody was going to Ukraine. when there was some nonsense going on in Ukraine at the time. So
Yeah, it was an interesting part, with the whole Ukraine and Russia thing going on. But I met this American girl, and she said she was going to Ukraine, and I was like, "Ooh, it's very tempting." But I decided to decline that offer, and she turned out all right. She had a very interesting adventure, very different than mine, but. Yeah, there are some. It was crazy because there are lots of instances that I had a couple of directions to choose. Like when I was in Berlin, I knew I wanted to go to Poland, but when I was out there, I met this American band that was touring Europe. They were like this ska punk surf band, and they were touring around, and we just kind of became really good friends. 'Cause I'm big into music. I was able to talk to them about it. We kind of met some other girls, and they would hang out with us. We were all having a good time, and they offered to have me tag along in the tour bus. Oh, wow. Yeah, and so I was like, "Ooh, this is a very tempting offer," but it really made me prioritize what I wanted to do too, which is I think another lesson I got. And it's kind of weird to turn down touring with an American band through Europe to go to Auschwitz, but my reasons for doing so were there. Yeah, and
because you only have so much time, so you kind of want to.
Yeah, exactly, and especially if you're there for certain reasons. But just being offered those things was really cool too.
Getting to meet the people. I mean, just having that experience of meeting the band and hanging out with them enough where they want to offer you.
And you made the connection,
yeah,
so
and that connection.
Yeah, you never know. Could
do it next European tour.
Exactly. I'll just be their groupie.
Yeah. So how did it work with like visa requirements or limits of the amount of time you can spend in the European Union? Did you do any sort of like in and out to get around that, or did it just kind of work out in your favor?
So it wasn't too bad because, when you go in, you're allowed to stay in Europe for 90 days. And, I actually had to leave because of that, but I'll get into that. But overall, traveling between all of Europe was really easy. They don't check your visa. Once you're in Europe, you can get around Europe, thankfully. So that was not a problem at all. The only hiccup I had was going from, I think it was Bosnia to Serbia or vice versa. I forget which one I did first. But, they're pretty more aware of that because, they're not really the best of friends. So, when you're crossing the border, they checked my visa, they double checked it, they kind of didn't look through my bags, but they kind of like checked out overall what I had, opened the trunk and all these things. So, and, they had armed guards at this like bridge. I'm like, this is a little bit different than, going across Central Europe, which is a lot more, lax on that. But I eventually did have to leave Europe because I did hit my time limit, but that's when I went back to England.
So the UK didn't count towards that time?
They also have a time, but, it's like a separate thing.
It's like a separate clock running.
Yeah, exactly. So, you could bounce between the two if you had to. I was ready to.
Yeah.
So what type of things did you pack and take with you?
So, I took a 55-ounce travel backpack with me. I just knew I wanted to kind of have something for everything because I didn't know what I wanted to do, where I was going to be, what kind of climates.
55 liter?
Oh, yeah, it's 55 liter.
55 ounces you're carrying with a baggie.
I like to travel really, really light. I carried one pair of socks. But, yeah, so, I just had like maybe one just nicer looking button-up shirt, in case I went somewhere, a lot of casual. I'd say one thing that helped me a lot was packing cubes. It's, just basically cubes that help you organize what you're packing easily instead of just having a backpack full of stuff everywhere.
So what's a packing cube? I'm not even familiar.
It's basically like a Tupperware, except, it's not a Tupperware.
So it's something to cram your stuff inside?
Yeah, you can, instead of putting, your fruit in one Tupperware and vegetables in another, I'm putting my socks and underwear in one and shirts in another.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, and that was super helpful, more than I thought it would be. I thought it would just be kind of a nice thing to have, but ended up being one of the most useful. And then another thing that was most useful that I'm glad I have was my my backup battery, just so I can charge things over USB. Getting power ports was kind of a luxury at some of these hostels and just places in general. If you're traveling days at a time with nowhere to power anything, so that battery definitely saved my butt multiple times. Yeah, I told you it was pretty easy to kind of get around like 90% of the time. Well, that other 10%, I was like really lost. And, a couple times my phone died, and if I didn't have that battery charger, maybe I'd still be lost.
Oh, no. No more Joshy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've found the same thing for the even U.S. travel and just like, even business travel. I bought a battery backup at an airport once, and I didn't realize like what I was getting myself into. It was really great to have this and not have to worry about your phone dying or, limit your time on it too much.
Definitely a lifesaver.
Yeah.
Was there anything that you wished you had packed or anything that you were like, this really wasn't useful, I should have just left it at home?
I kind of made do. I guess the biggest thing is I brought my GoPro to make travel videos, record a lot of videos. I kind of wish I brought some more accessories for it, like an extra battery, maybe another video or a memory card, a couple different kinds of tripods. Like I wish I brought more video equipment, but I was just kind of starting out at this, and I didn't really realize that until maybe like the halfway point where I was like, oh, this is pretty fun.
Yeah, those videos were actually really amazing. Like I remember loving to watch those. There was one where you were hiking with some friends through like cliffside or something. Where was that at?
Yeah, so that was in Slovakia, and that was kind of where I told you where I just kind of ended up there because some people were traveling. Actually, the girl that went to Ukraine, like that's where she was a part of that trip. So a lot of this is like interconnected. And I didn't plan it at all. We just stayed in this hostel in a place called Zdar, Zdiar, and never heard of it, never really knew about it. They kind of heard it offhand and they planned that trip, and that's why I tagged along. And then here I was in one of the most incredible places.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely amazing, and definitely one of the highlights. I mean, there were plenty of highlights, but it was just really fun because one of the new friends I made over there, the best comment I got from doing this whole thing, because whenever I went somewhere and met new friends, I had to kind of give them a disclaimer, like, look, guys, I'm gonna be recording a lot of video. If you could just pretend I'm not recording video, pretend we're on a documentary. But it's kind of funny because almost everyone instantly was like, okay, yeah, they totally got it. They would ignore, I would do things because I would prop it up in places, and they wouldn't even pay attention to it. Like everyone got into it like really, really awesomely. And one of them was like the hiking trip. So we just kind of like hiked through the mountains there for a day trip. It took longer than we expected to. The sun was coming down, and we weren't even near close to finishing. And yeah, so we're kind of finishing hiking this mountain in pretty much pitch black. And
Did you have flashlights at least?
Yeah, we had some flashlights, but those were our phones, and battery was running low. So hence the battery pack.
Leave them there.
Yeah. So yeah, biggest pro tip: bring your batteries.
Did those videos make it onto YouTube?
I did put them on YouTube.
Yeah, we'll have that in the show page then. We'll definitely link to that.
Yeah, please. Yeah. I kind of recorded the entire series of my entire trip. I didn't really have an intention of it. If I had to say there was an intention, it would be just for my personal use. Like maybe 20, 30 years down the line, this is something I can really hold on to for myself. And, I put it out there for anyone that was curious or wanted to watch. And
yeah, I think it was definitely cool, for us and for your friends to be able to see, what your journey was like. Because, I think that for the most part, everyone was supportive of you, but most of us still had like no idea like what it was going to be like for you, or like.
And whenever
I can't imagine traveling by myself. Like,
whenever a video popped up, we're like, "Yeah, he's still alive."
Yeah, so it was good, because there wasn't a whole lot of communication. I know we talked on Facebook a little bit from time to time when you had internet, but.
I sent you puppy pictures.
Yeah, I definitely needed Snapchats of my dog to keep me going. So that also helped me.
Well, speaking of the internet, what was that like having service or cell phone service or internet? Did you pay a lot for it, or was it?
It wasn't really a problem. I had the biggest thing my father helped me with was an international plan for my cell phone. It was a little bit pricey, but I didn't have to worry about SIM cards, or if I was in a country I would have to do this, or a different country I would have to do that. Like it just kind of like worked. Mm-hmm. But it was a little bit more pricier, and I barely got any minutes, but I used it purely as emergencies. only, which I did have to use a couple times. So thanks,
I
Dad.
guess that's the good thing with Google Fi now. It's pretty much international. So if you're planning like a long-term trip like that, you can always get Google Fi because it's month to month, and
Yeah, there's
so it's
definitely
less of a concern now than it probably was a couple years ago.
there's definitely better ways of doing it now. I think it'd be much easier.
So on the show, we've talked a little bit about being a digital nomad and people who work while they're traveling. Do you think that this sort of backpacker lifestyle would be possible for anybody who's going to be working online along the way, or would that kind of require a different sort of trip?
It's definitely doable. The thing that comes instantly into mind was I met this American somewhere, and I kind of you just talk to people what they do and things like that. And this guy, he just said, "Well, I teach English to Russians," and I was like, "Well, how do you do that?" It's like, "Well, we go on Skype and I just teach them English." So I've been traveling for X amount of time, and every day I just kind of set aside a few hours or more to kind of tutor Russians on English, and that's how I get my money, and it's flexible, and kind of get to do whatever I want. So it's kind of like just figuring out what you're doing, going at your own pace. I think everyone has different circumstances, and I think that's up to the individual to figure out what's the best way of doing it. But if you work remotely, it's definitely a possibility. The only thing I would think is if you have a demanding job, I think it would kind of like pull away your focus.
Yeah, maybe you'd have to pass up on some opportunities that you otherwise wouldn't.
Yeah, if you don't have the freedom to do certain things, and if you miss certain times, or if you 100% need like really good internet,
Yeah.
kind of stick you in certain places.
After all of this, you said you came home around 4.5 months. What was it like coming back home?
It was a very interesting experience because my last week, I went to Iceland, and that entire week I was there, I kind of knew that this was my last chapter of this story. The rest of the time I was just kind of going with the flow. I didn't have to worry about it. I knew there was a finish point eventually, but I wasn't there. But when I was in Iceland, it was like, oh, this is actually my final days. I'm gonna have to go back home, find a job, get back into my life. This has been kind of like a nice little, able to step away from all that, but I knew it was time to step back into it. But I think that perspective helped me a lot because, I knew I was going back home. I knew how to do this, so I might as well kind of like do it right, and, it really motivated me when I came back home to really like go for it. And I think that was kind of a big thing.
I think at one point you were talking to us about how you weren't sure that you were going to move back to Atlanta, that you were maybe looking at some other cities or potentially even another country, finding a job and moving away. What made you end up deciding that you did want to stay in Atlanta, and what kind of keeps you here?
Yeah, I was having real existential crisis at that point. It's like, oh, do I move? Do I stay? Like, I don't even know. I was talking to some mutual friends of us that live in Texas, and, we were talking about Austin, and I went to Austin before, and I fell in love with the city. And when I came back home, I was like fixated. It's like, all right, now I'm going to move, go to Austin, get a new job, start a new life, almost like an extension of my backpacking trip.
Uh-huh.
But it was kind of just luck. What happened next? I looked on Facebook, and I saw a mutual, just a friend that I knew from before. I kind of only knew him like loosely. But he posted that, his small company had a job opening, and, it was in something that I did. So I just kind of like asked about it, and I got an interview set up pretty much right away, and I checked out the place. It was like one of those trendy small tech startup kind of cultures, and, it really made me rethink it because I was like, well, I have something really good here, have my friends here, my parents aren't too far away. The thought of leaving Atlanta and starting a new life somewhere, I think I kind of like romanticized a bit. I was like, oh, this is what I should be doing. But I don't know, for me, that wasn't really the right path. I'm sure for like a lot of other people they are. But it's like everything just kind of pointed toward here. If like a really good opportunity came, I knew I needed to take it up, and that was it. And I don't regret it.
Really amazing. It's kind of just an incredible journey story, really. I mean, that's how I think about it anyways. But you said that you learned throughout all of this to focus more on the moment and kind of seize opportunities and seize the day. Would you say that's the biggest thing you learned from your experience, or is there something else that you really took back from all of that?
I think the biggest thing was kind of a self-discovery in a way. Anyone that is thinking about doing a similar thing, my biggest advice would be to keep a journal. So, this entire time I was just keeping a journal, writing thoughts and things like that. And it was kind of interesting because I came back home and I looked at my journal, and I'd say like more than half of it was like negative things about myself. I was like, man, this is kind of a sad journal. I just kind of, took this huge backpacking trip with all these amazing stories, but a lot of it was like focused on things I didn't like about myself. And, at first it was kind of a sad thing. I was like, oh, this isn't really how I wanted that to turn out. But yeah, that's just what came naturally. And I kind of realized after that was kind of a really good, like list of things I needed to like address and fix and work on, just, making new friends, being open to opportunities, not being afraid to do certain things. A lot of it was kind of like interpersonal. And, there were a lot of other things I learned how to do better, like, how to do trips and plan things and go new places. But I think overall, just the self-discovery part was the most important for me.
I mean, the journaling can be like an emotional cleanse too. So even if it is a lot of negativity at first, you really are at least channeling it out in a somewhat positive manner and not keeping all of those thoughts inside of you. And like you said, then you realize, okay, some of these things I actually have control over, I can fix.
Yeah, especially when you're like isolated, it's like nobody and you're completely on your own. Your brain will start to think things maybe it never has before, or really kind of make other things clearer.
It seems like your whole journey was a transition from where you started out, maybe on bad grounds, where you'd just been laid off and you were a little bit anxious, and you came out on the other side, on better footing and more ready to tackle your circumstances and improve your situation.
Yeah. I saw a friend not too long ago, and he actually kind of put it in the best words for me that I never really thought of, because we're just kind of talking about like similar things. And he watched all my my video journals on YouTube and things like that. And he just kind of said, like, it was really cool to watch your videos. And, this is a guy that's known me since college, very, very personally. And, he said it was just really cool to see you kind of, like, blossom into who you are. Because, before, it's very, like, reserved, would kind of, like, be shy, kind of hold myself and not express myself fully. But, when I came back home, for the first time ever, I didn't really have a problem with that.
So what one piece of advice would you have for somebody who maybe wants to travel more and, maybe a trip like yours through Europe backpacking seems appealing to them? And what would you tell somebody who's thinking about doing that?
I would definitely encourage them. The biggest thing I noticed when people would ask me about my trip is most of them would always have a friend with them in mind. Like, I want to do this, but, I only want to do it with someone else. And I just kind of found myself every time trying to encourage them to do it by themselves if they can, especially if they've never done it before. Like, if you've never done such a thing, like, do it by yourself. Like, that's to me, that's what the purpose is of going out there. Because, if you want to do a big trip, I'd say my biggest advice is also, ask yourself why. If it's just to have some fun, then that's fine. But, if it's really something you want to kind of go out in the world on your own and, kind of question things, and I think you need to do that by yourself.
And so just knowing you, I know that you're probably not done with international travel. You have some other things rolling around in your head. Do you have any firm plans right now to tackle any more adventures, or just kind of things you're thinking about?
It's kind of funny because, when I came back home, I had that, like, travel bug. They talk about, like, once you do, you got to keep going. And, I had that, but then, I don't know, I was kind of like, it goes back to, why you're traveling. And I didn't really have a good reason. I would just say, if I wanted to go somewhere, to me, the biggest one would be Southeast Asia. But I asked myself why, and I'd just be like, well, for fun. And I was like, well, if I want to have fun, I can just do that in the States. And, there's things here that are, very appealing to me. Or, maybe you've noticed, but, like, to me, my past year or two has been kind of focused on like music festivals and, traveling to different states that have them and, experiencing those things. And to me, that's been as rewarding than, as traveling around the world. I don't think you need to travel far to do, the things you love. A lot of it can be, right here at home.
Really good point. It's important to remember why you want to do things. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be Instagram perfect all the time. It's just about whatever makes you happy, whatever makes you feel like you're living your life the way you want to.
Oh, well, thanks so much for talking with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Hey everyone, so I hope you enjoyed that interview with Josh, and hopefully you got some lessons from it that you can apply to your own life and your own travels and future travels. So be sure to check out the show notes page at thinkingliberty.com/7. We'll throw up the links there that Josh mentioned, like where he found his hostel reviews and the YouTube videos that he took along the way. They're really neat. So be sure to check out thinkingliberty.com/7 for all of that. And while you're at it, be sure to follow us on social media. Search for us on Facebook. We're Thinking Liberty, or facebook.com/listentl. And on Twitter, we're twitter.com/listentl. So be sure to give us a like and a follow there.
Yeah, and also, connect with us on social media. We're always happy to chat or listen to any feedback or questions that you might have. If you have any questions about this episode or any other episode, we're happy to hear them. If there's any topics that you'd like us to discuss in the future, we're happy to go into those as well. Or if there are any topics that we've covered in the past that you'd like a little bit more information, or you didn't feel like we covered it enough, or we missed something that you really have more questions on, just let us know.
And lastly, we're still asking our listeners to give us a like, a rating, a review, and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you happen to be listening on. So as I've said in episodes past, on iTunes, we're so new that we still have the chance of getting to the new and noteworthy list, which would get us in front of a lot of people and get a lot more subscriptions and get us into the ears of just a lot more listeners. So we'd really appreciate it if you just take the time to give us a like, rating, review, a subscribe on whatever podcast platform you happen to be on. And just spread the word about Thinking Liberty. If you maybe have a friend who's interested in travel, or you think they would be interested in whatever topic we cover on an episode, just send them that link and let them decide for themselves whether this is something they want to subscribe to or not. Anyway, I think that's it for this week. So thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to Thinking Liberty. Subscribe to the show for free on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher at thinkingliberty.com. You'll also find detailed show notes pages, articles by Zach and Sarah, and more. We'll see you next time.